Or they
Walk out of the
no. So they're walking into the bar and they go up to the
After being
bartender and go,
married.
"I'm sorry, we have the wrong place. Where's the cemetery? I need to resurrect my cat."
No, that's better. Okay, all right. I'll give you that.
I'm trying to segue into the actual episode
Yeah.
because some of us have to be on desk in an hour again.
What is the bar called? The Bangor, Maine, and
It's called the Stanley Hotel. I'm sorry.
oh, it's the it's
What
the
is it called?
It's the Overlook Bar.
It's the Stanley Hotel. It's the Overlook Bar.
I was gonna say like because flip flop towards the main banger.
The Main Bank. Ah, that's it.
So on this episode,
Okay.
the oh so special 50th episode of the
Yes.
podcast,
At which
we are
point-
discussing a very
At which point we reveal we've actually lost our minds.
The king of horror,
God save the king.
Stephen King.
Take a shot every time we do that, I swear.
I'm developing.
Are we
stomach
turning
ulcers.
semi-bookish into a drinking game now?
I mean, if you drink water, you're just gonna have to go to the bathroom a whole bunch.
That's
All
true.
right. So I
Anyway,
just wanna
Stephen
know-
King.
Let's be a little bit more friendly.
I want to
family
know what
friendly.
Andy is reading, and then we'll go from Andy to Aaron.
I literally just
Wait,
finished.
who are you?
Oh, I am. What is my name, Grant? I'm Andy.
Yeah, you're Andy.
What?
What do you mean?
Andy's
What's my
coming.
real name?
Oh, your true name, the one behind the name.
Yes.
Dungeon Daddy.
Perfection.
Thank you.
What even is this episode?
I'm actually not reading anything right now. I did read a few other.
Listen!
I finished a couple things.
I'll forgive you because I did the same thing this morning.
Okay. I finished volume 3 of The Sandman. I mean, it's something I've read before. That was a few days ago. I finished dare I say the word live on the air, an erotic graphic novel by...
course.
By a person.
I'd have to look his name up, and I'll come back to it later,
Okay.
because it's a very difficult to pronounce writer and artist.
Oh, sure,
His
okay.
name, but he wrote the erotic graphic novel series Sunstone.
Oh, okay.
Loved those. I mean, they're not as dirty as you might expect. Like the two main characters in that particular series. Oh, my word!
Goodness, his name is very hard to pronounce.
Right?
Is it Cedric?
Stejpan Sejic.
Yeah,
Something
his
gets-
name is kind of nuts.
But like the graphic novel, it was a Kickstarter book that I backed because I like his work. He also did a run on Harley Quinn called Harleen. It's beautiful artwork,
yeah.
and it's a kind of a good twist on Harley Quinn. I mean, it's nothing that inventive and new, but it's new enough to be like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Oh Lord, the cover for fine print makes me want to.
Right?
You know, okay, all right.
Joker is prettier than I would like to see him, but that's part of his thing, the way he draws. But no, that's fun. And I also finished reading High Times in the Low Parliament by Kelly Robson.
Oh, how was that?
I want more. Like, it's a novella. I get it. It's a novella, but like,
Oh, it's okay.
like I feel like even as a novella, there was, like, it was over in the blink of an eye.
They usually are.
But I feel like there are other novellas out there that, like, significant world building. And, like, it was good. I enjoyed it. As an audiobook, it was really fun. And wait?
I was gonna say who was the narrator for that.
Amy... Let me see. There we go. Amy Scanlon. And she did a great job. It was one of those weird things. Like, I'm going to have to, like, balance, okay, like, how much can I forgive it because it's a novella, or do I need more even out of that novella to make certain things like, there were things that were just nonsensical. Like, I needed to know why the world was the way it was. Like, you get an idea the way it was.
Yeah,
But-
I think that's the thing with novellas is that there's, because of the limited space,
Mm-hmm.
it's less. I was reading a writer talk about the difference between when they write novels and when they write novellas. When they're writing a novella, they just say what they want to say,
Mhm.
and they don't elaborate. They just
they don't
just
have to
say
fluff it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But with a novel, because you have so much space, you show everything so that the
Well,
reader
even as a
gets to
novella,
sort of
like, I've read other
understand.
novellas where, like, it's very direct, it's very quick.
Yeah.
But I feel like this one was definitely rocketing ahead at 88 miles per hour.
Wow.
I mean, I still enjoyed it. I haven't decided what I'm going to give it out of 5 stars.
Sure.
But
Okay.
I got to think about it for another day. But
Sure.
that's what I've read, and I'm not sure what's next on my plate.
Okay.
I have a couple things, but I'm not sure.
That's fair, Aaron.
Hello.
That is Erin
I-
Blom, the Supreme Overlord. Just as a reminder, she supremely overlords everything.
Absolutely.
Especially when you mispronounce her surname.
Yes.
Wait, how do you say it?
Bloom, like the flower.
What?
Yeah.
I've been here 2.5 years. Anyways, Erin.
Congratulations, you finally learned.
Oh, quick shout out. I just finished late last night my rewatch of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the films, the Peter Jackson films, and as I said on social media, I'm always amazed at how well they have aged.
Yeah, they're really good.
Erin, sorry.
Okay. So I am currently reading, and I'll even tell you what I'm reading when I finally come back from my vacation.
Oh.
Just because it's in the back, and I'm waiting for it to come out, and I'm too excited for it.
So you're gonna take it on the plane with you?
No.
Oh, I would.
I'm not taking library books with me on the plane just because I have a tendency to lose things,
That is
and
smart.
I don't want to have to pay it for it again and buy it again.
That's fair.
So the first thing I'm reading at home right now is, speaking of the theme for today, the overall arching theme, not like the specific author theme.
Yeah.
I'm reading It Rides a Pale Horse by Andy Marino.
Okay.
Oh.
It is basically, the whole entire thing is, there's two siblings, Peter and his sister Betsy, and they are moving back to their hometown, and they have this house that they've gotten, and Lark, who's the main character, so that's Peter, he's gonna go deliver a piece. They're both artists. He's delivering a piece to a buyer, and this whole entire time, this transaction's pretty normal. Everything's fine, except the guards in the whole entire time play him a feed of his sister being abducted, first of all. And then he's informed during this whole entire transaction that his sister is safe for now, but he's been given a book, and he has to do what the book says for his sister to go free. Otherwise, she dies. And so it seems normal enough, except, the book is a little bit demonic.
Okay.
And so he has to, figure out how to get his sister back and deal with this book.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
That sounds cool.
when I come back from vacation, I'm going to be reading Sign Here by Claudia Lex.
Okay.
It is a humorous horror kind of novel. I guess it's horror. It's not really. It's more humorous than that.
Okay.
Where the main character is a guy, and this guy works in hell on specifically one of the specific levels, and he's going to be getting a promotion. Now, the only way he can get a promotion is if he kills the or he's responsible and reaps the death of somebody from a very prominent family.
Oh, okay.
Plot twist, that person or one of the family members signs a contract deal with the devil. So he has to work around that to get a promotion to get to the next circle of hell, and it's supposed to be hilarious.
Okay.
Vaguely reminiscent of The Good Place.
Yes.
Yes, and I was going to say it reminds me of that show, Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell.
Yes. And then meanwhile, I'm also playing a game called Potion Permit that came out last month, and it's basically like a Stardew Valley, but not really.
Okay. Yeah.
So you are a doctor, you're a chemist, and the residents of your town are sick, and you have to go forage and create potions and help them and heal them all back to health.
Nice.
And so, that's what I'm doing. Lord Ish, what is thou reading today?
I artsed. I don't know. I'm still reading 300 Million. I just haven't been reading a whole lot.
Sure.
I've gotten distracted. Watched a lot of movies.
What did you watch?
Yesterday I watched 2 movies. I watched The Fly again for spooky season, which is good.
Spooky season.
And I watched a movie that I've been putting off for a super long time, Dragged Across Concrete, which I really liked, and it was extremely brutal.
Okay.
I mean, the name just sounds exactly like what it is on the tin, though.
If you've seen Bone Tomahawk or Brawl in Cell Block 99, it's the same director. It's Vince Vaughn and Mel Gibson.
Wait, why?
But
Interesting.
so yes.
Okay.
So it's a cop thriller basically.
Okay.
It came out at the height of the conversation around police brutality, and I could see it pushing some people the wrong way with how it handles this.
I could see that.
But just it handled. I don't know. It's a very nihilistic movie in general. It's just so like it's really long. The scenes are drawn out, but it lets you breathe with the characters.
Yeah.
And the length, just like in the last third of the movie, just makes the suspense almost unbearable.
Wow.
It's just it was good. It was good. Yeah, that's basically it. And I'm playing Elden Ring still.
Nice. How's it going?
Okay.
So
what
this
does that
part's
mean?
going
Yep,
really
I need
well.
I need
That
to
means
level
he's
up.
playing a Souls-like game. That's what
I
it
need to
means.
grind a little bit.
Yeah. All right. I have not yet.
The answer to okay really just means it's going very well in terms of a Souls-like game, dear listeners.
Yeah.
The world does just keep getting bigger. Like when I think that, like, oh, this is the boundary of the. You know.
Oh, that is.
We're done. We're done. This is the end. No, it's not. Here we go. Next one.
Really quick, did you play Skyrim back in the day?
Oh, of course. Okay.
I
so
still play Skyrim.
Yeah.
No,
We'll
I-
have to talk more about that, like how it compares.
I waited outside for Skyrim, in the freezing cold,
Oh,
In November?
in November.
I knew I loved you.
Weren't you in school?
Yeah, it was a school night.
It was.
I was able to play it for like half an hour, and then my
you
parents
act
came
like
over.
an entire generation of people did not grow up going to midnight signings for a book by a lady who's
Books,
I mean,
movies, video game.
Like, come on,
I only went to the movie.
come on, like,
I only went to the movie.
Like-
My mom was like, you can't do that.
like.
All right, Tony Lee. Mouth from the South.
Let's just say that right now so I'm on a Star Wars kick right now. I'm never.
Fair.
That's not true.
You're always on a Star
I'm
Wars
always on a
kick.
Star Wars kick, but I'm on a Star Wars kick right now.
I mean, from what you've told me, it's understandable.
What is being finished downloading on my Xbox again, because I have decided that if I have to stand as far away from my TV as possible just to get through the Wookiee planet, I will do it because I
They're
deserve
spiders.
it.
They're spiders.
They're big and they're green.
And
they're
except for the giant albino
They're
one.
like the size of my character, and he's carrying a lightsaber. There's no melee weapons here. I can't just shoot them from a distance like I can in Skyrim, and they rush up on you, 2 or 3 at a time.
Tony's playing Fallen Jedi.
Yeah, Fallen Order. Yes, it's too much, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it this weekend. I'm gonna spend
When you
a
get to the
significant amount
end,
of time.
when you get to the end, let me know what you think of the Inquisitors.
First of all, you have to understand, in the Star Wars universe, my favorite addition to the Star Wars universe has been the Inquisitors. And that is saying something because I felt that they were the weakest component of the Obi-Wan series.
No, she's coded.
Like, easily.
One of them is coded in
like,
a certain way, and I want to
visually.
know if Tony picks up on it.
If you've seen... you haven't seen Rebels. If you've seen Rebels, you would understand what I'm saying. The Inquisitors were introduced in Rebels, and they were bam.
No, I'm just like, I'm not disagreeing necessarily.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
like kind of reliving some of like, there were a lot of weaker visual elements too.
Oh, well, he and I disagree on this, but...
That is for
Anyway,
another
that's
episode
for another-
later on.
That was one of them too.
Yeah,
That is for
yes.
our other next make.
But as for
episode
my
to
other
go.
things, in terms of what I'm reading, I just finished this morning listening to Shadowhunter. Its original title is Darth Maul Shadowhunter. But anyway, fantastic book. It's written by Michael Reeves, one of the original writers in the Batman the Animated Series. But he's an even better novelist. He's fantastic. I read this book when I was like 12. It was the first book that introduced complex narrative to me, and I'm still impressed. Like, I'm still, all these years later, going, dang, he's good. But this was different because it's the audiobook read by Sam Witwer, who voiced Darth Maul in the Clone Wars and Rebels series, but he also voiced and was the body figure for Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games. And the man is a voice actor for a reason. Like, It's disgusting what he can do with his voice.
It's like listening to the guy Charles who does the voice of Mario, also does Parthenax and Skyrim.
Yeah, like I follow him on Instagram, partly for the dogs that he rescues, but I really follow him on Instagram because he's also hot. But I follow him on Instagram because he's a really good voice actor.
I can attest to that as well. I've listened to a number of books narrated by him.
I know I just sounded
none
like
of them
that.
Related to Star Wars. Go figure.
Oh, I know I just sounded like that person who, actually reads the magazine articles in Playboy. No, that's not how I really do follow him because he's a great voice actor.
Actually, once upon a time, they were pretty good legit
Oh,
articles.
gosh. Next.
Let's segue immediately into the topic at hand, which is the 50th anniversary
I just hate Hugh Hefner,
of this
so,
whole entire thing.
Yes,
And,
we have turned 50 today.
Yay, which means what?
Which means we have like 17 more years until we can retire or something like that.
No, that's not what I meant.
If you discover the subliminal trivia question within this episode and answer it correctly, you can deposit your answer at 143 East Maumee, or you can email it to us at Adrian District Library at adrian.lib.mi.us. You win a trip to Disneyland. Okay, I'm lying. There is no subliminal message.
We'll give you some swag, though.
Also, I feel like it's kind of inappropriate to mention Disneyland in a Stephen King episode. Like, if there were ever two
Do I need to read
entertainment
it?
entities at
No.
odds with one
Wait, did you say
another.
Stephen King?
Oh,
We're getting better at this.
Never getting through this episode.
No, I know, we're like half an hour in.
I have a question. Do I need
Yeah.
to actually reiterate the joke again?
Is there a joke?
Yeah, it's
At the end, or do you want
At
to do
the
it
end?
now?
I'll do it at the end.
Okay, really quick. Who has read? I mean, have we all read a Stephen King novel?
I've read.
I know I have. I know
I've
you
read
have.
The Body.
One.
You read The Body?
I read
that
The
counts.
Body.
That counts because it was published as a novella.
I read it because I watched the movie.
Actually, from the novella, the
movie's
collection,
really
there was
good.
different seasons which had The Body. Was it called The Apt Pupil in the book as well? Rita Hayworth or A Shawshank Redemption.
Was that in there?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I can't remember the fourth one.
Oh yeah, and then I read
The-
One for the Road. I remember that one too.
Like the fourth compilation of short stories?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I read that
Different
one. I read, and then also
seasons.
Salem's Lot. I read Salem's Lot too.
Ooh.
Nightmares and
Because we had to
Dreamscapes,
read
did
it
you say that one?
for my film.
Oh, it does have. Wow.
His literature to film class. I had
Yeah.
to watch because we read Salem's Lot and then we watched the actual movie.
You read Salem's Lot?
Yeah.
You know how big that book is?
Yeah.
Like, it's sitting on a pristine copy of Salem's Lot came in, like a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, and it's been sitting on my desk because I'm afraid to take it home. Like, it's so pretty. Like, I don't know, like, and it's from a while ago, so I'm like, how did someone manage to have this book this long? And did they never touch it? Did they just dust around it? Like, it's so pretty. I don't understand. So, anyway.
And you were assigned it for class?
We had to read a little sliver of it at first.
Sure.
And then I just kind of read it afterwards.
Yeah.
This was back in high school, so I don't remember most of it because I have the attention span of an ant at times.
Yeah.
But we did read a segment of it, and then we watched the movie because it was a film and literature class. So we were looking at stuff that had actual literature connected to it.
Sure, yeah. So what's interesting about Salem's Lot, actually, I've always found this interesting about Stephen King, when he turned in Salem's Lot to his editor was like, all right, so I like the book because I like what you do, but you realize that after this, you're going to have to get comfortable with people calling you a horror writer. And he was like, well, why? He's like, because that's 2 in a row. And, Carrie kind of blew the socks off people. So this one's going to do the same thing. You're just going to have to get used to it. So he was just like, all right, cool. Even though he actually does not like being called a horror writer.
No, yeah. And I think to a degree he has kind of escaped that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It took a
I mean,
while.
he's known as like the spooky guy.
Oh,
but
sure, yeah.
Yeah. People know he does other stuff as well.
Yeah. I know that in the mid-90s there's some Charlie Rose yes, I am that dork. There's some Charlie Rose interviews where he Charlie Rose is basically trying to get him to admit that he's a horror writer, and he's like, listen, I'm a suspense writer if I'm anything. Like, yeah, sure, I write whatever I want, but yeah, I mean, I do the suspense thing all the time because I like for stories to move and clip, and I want to feel certain things, and suspense is, that fits what I'm doing.
Are we talking about, like, why we want to read, like, scary books and stuff?
We're talking about Stephen King.
Yeah, I know. But I came in, like, I was going, why is all his books set in Maine? And I was on a research bench.
Well, because he's from Maine.
Yeah, well, that's, like, part of it.
Yeah, he's from Bangor.
I think, like, just from, like, interviews with him and stuff, I think literally he can't stop writing. And he just writes whatever's on his mind. And what happens to be on his mind is usually a guy in Maine. So, so I think that's why that kind of turns out like that.
Can I throw a mild spoiler alert about Stephen King that always entertains me a little bit? In the Dark Tower books,
Oh, no, you can't spoil those.
Well, how far into the Dark Tower series?
Yeah, listen, you can't spoil those. I'm sorry, we're still reading. You can't know.
Oh, right.
You haven't
I
finished?
watched the movie, too.
I know the ending. I heard that a long time ago. But like as far as like character deaths,
have you
and stuff,
finished book?
I've read the first 2.
Okay, never mind. Oh, I thought you were done. Okay, and I didn't know you planned on reading them all.
I have a whole set waiting at home. You can't spoil them.
Oh gosh, there's one super metacognitive moment in the Dark Tower books that just I need to talk to more people about it because it says so much for Stephen King's.
All right, so here's my question to you, actually, because I actually feel this way. Like now, the Interview with the Vampire is out there. It's not a Stephen King property, but I'm boiling up to the question. So now that Interview with the Vampire is out there, now that Mayfair Witches is out there, and we're seeing Anne Rice getting the Game of Thrones treatment, why do you feel Dark Tower hasn't had that treatment yet?
Well, I think they tried, and it failed horribly with
that movie.
With that movie, yeah.
That's a
and that
was
that's
WB,
that's
right?
A try? Like, does that count as a try?
Maybe just like an abortion.
Wait, there was a movie?
Woo! Yeah, right, exactly. Yes, with the lovely, delicious Idris Elba.
And he and Matthew McConaughey.
I was gonna say,
yeah, good casting.
They were good casting for the 2 roles.
Yeah.
Like the tone and aesthetic of the film, I think, was there.
Okay.
The acting, the tone, aesthetic, but they J.J. Abrams did.
So here's again bouncing off of my question. Like,
but that question,
if it were to get the treatment, how accurate do you would you and the fan base want it to be?
There is
the source material.
I think it could be pretty.
There could be. There's a level of accuracy within this, and which I have to preface the Dark Tower discussion with. He ties in Salem's Lot. He ties in Hearts in Atlantis.
It, right?
Technically not it. I mean, there are a couple connections from it.
There's an Easter egg.
The Stand.
There's, oh my gosh, I totally forgot the name of the deity, the turtle, the great turtle. I can't remember his name.
Antoine?
Not
Antoine.
I have to come back to it. But the Great Turtle in the Dark Tower books.
Oh.
But I think the turtle is referenced clearly in it. He gives the young boy knowledge of how to beat.
Maturin? Maturin? The turtle?
Maturin?
Maturin?
I'd have to look it up, but yes.
I can't
it has a name like
pronounce
that.
this. Is this one?
Maturin. We're probably both saying it way off. But like, there's a spiritual connection between like a deity that factors in both the Dark Tower, not super heavily, factors a little bit more in it. But like even the clown from it, you get to meet another breed of that being, like a different version of that being. Yes, thank you. So there's a lot of things in the Dark Tower books. If they were to create like this awesome epic Game of Thrones miniseries,
do you think it could
as
just
a super
end up
fan,
expanding into the other universes?
It could, but they either have to make the decision right now, like we're either gonna leave some things on the cutting room floor for the sake of not forcing our hand to branch into those things, because some things are, as a fanboy, I'd be like, yes!
Right.
But as someone who understands what deserves to be cut, sometimes, I think a lot of it, because it's so all over the place, like, and beautifully so.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot, like even book 4, book 5, I'm trying to think there's one of the books in the Dark Tower that's technically goes back in time. It doesn't really go back in time, but like this narrative, so you understand things going on in the next book.
Oh, sure.
Like the entire book is in the past.
Yeah.
The viewpoints of the past.
We own this
So
book.
would that necessarily work to have like 3-4 seasons of Dark Tower? They're doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, the next season's going to become entirely set in the
Oh, I
past.
see what you're saying. So they would have to play with
Maybe they could go
timeline things early enough for the audience to.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I think they could definitely include a lot of like of the small details,
Sure.
but I think some of them probably are going to end up getting caught, and I wouldn't be. But the problem, like comparison to the movie, just there was a hodgepodge. It was like this. They had the idea. They wanted to do a few things, and a few things worked, but what book were they trying to emulate? Because it doesn't seem like they're doing the first one, elements from other later books, and things that completely reinvented. Now, there is a weird cyclical nature to the Dark Tower. If you ever get to the very end, you'll figure out what I mean. But
Is it like the Wheel of Time? It just keeps recreating and spitting out new stories.
No spoilers.
no spoilers. But
Okay, fine.
But,
Fine,
like,
I'll leave them.
they tried to explain like that's a retelling of the Dark Tower story, and it could work. It could work. The movie should have worked, but it just did not work. Like, and it made me not want to go see it because I sat there with my friend Amy on the steps of the theater, and we were just like, "What the hell did we just watch?" Like, Idris, you're beautiful. Matthew McConaughey, you're great. You know,
And also beautiful.
I was going to say,
they're
it's
both
also
beautiful.
beautiful.
But
Hey,
so
hey.
yes, they could give it the Game of Thrones treatment, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
there's so much to consider. Like I think that would be as ambitious as the Harry Potter films. Like you need to lock people in.
I mean, Game of Thrones was ambitious. We don't like to think of it that way now. But
Well, yeah, the
it
Game of
was
Thrones
a big deal.
I mean, they could do it with the movie, but they could do it with the series, and I think one season per book. You know, however they wanted to work it.
Yeah. All right.
It would be ambitious. Like I think it could potentially be as big, if not bigger, than Game of Thrones, depending on how they wanted to really.
I mean, it definitely
And they
covers
really-
more
yeah.
stylistic ground. But
And there, there's something that happens. I'm going to be all over the place today, but it's fine.
No,
there's
this is
something
great.
that happens when authors die
Mm-hmm.
that terrifies me. Now that I think about it, King's children are and wife are they're all writers and creators themselves, so I feel like they would lock everything down anyway, and it'd be like they would be harder to get through than Disney. Like,
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, you want to make a Stephen King property? Do you want him to roll over in his grave and come back?
No, wait.
You're not getting nothing.
Oh, this
you
is
know?
a fast. I'd have to track it down, but I believe there's an. I'm trying to think which movie, Maximum Overdrive, maybe Stephen King.
the one
wrote
that
this-
he directed.
Did he?
Yeah.
and it was atrocious and bad.
Was
and
it?
people ask, like, because a lot of people forget that he did that, and people ask him sometimes, like, "Hey, Stephen King, like, your adaptations, film adaptations, generally don't do well. Why don't you direct one? Have you seen Maximum Overdrive? You don't want me to direct my own movies."
It's really funny that people have that opinion of his adaptations because it's like actually
There's quite a few good
Some of
ones.
them are pretty good.
I mean, yeah. Well, it's not just that. It's like so famously, the audience that is listening to this may not know this, but we all in this room all know this. Famously, he loathes Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
He's
Yeah.
very wrong.
Yeah, he very
And in
much.
fact-
I
and-
love Stephen King, but he is very wrong.
Right. I feel like, and part of this, like, I think the first time I heard him describe this, like, I was like, oh, that would be a horrible thing to experience. He said that when he went to see The Shining, the film premiere,
Yeah.
he said that he had to wait until the theater emptied out, and then he sat on the floor with his head tucked between his knees because he was hyperventilating, because that's how painful the experience of watching that movie was for him. And I think what's fascinating to me about that is that Kubrick was an iconic film director, which is why he got the job, right, in the first place. And he was coming at adapting this work as a filmmaker. And King had not yet had enough experience with that process to recognize that the movie that is made of your work might be a fantastic movie and not take much from your work at all. You know what I mean? Like like that things have to change in order for the visual medium to be as good as it can be. and that there are things in the book, like in a book, that you simply absolutely cannot do on screen, and vice versa. Like there are things that you do on screen that if you tried to do it in a book, it's impossible. It just doesn't make any sense. The tools are not there, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I think it makes sense to me that, like, he would have such a reaction because he was still writing from that personal space of, like, it's my baby, it's the thing that I love, you know?
Especially because, like, he was so connected with it in the first place because he wrote the whole entire Shining because of his experiences in the hotel that it's set in.
That, and I feel like he personally identified, like he put a lot of himself in Jack Torrance.
Yeah,
and
right.
The movie The Shining definitely changes a lot about that character. Where in the book it's a essentially good man being corrupted by this haunted hotel.
I wonder though if that's because of like. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like we can do that anyways. Like in TV series, it's a little bit easier to do that, but because the book is like what, like how many pages? Like
1,100.
It's not.
Wait,
it's not
which
one of those
one?
longer ones.
Shining.
Oh.
Shining. That's like 300, 350.
But like,
like that.
you can expand on a character through that in that 300 pages, and it could like. It is hours upon hours of him trying to figure out the correct wording and correct prose to, like, get his character across that he is probably a good character who's been corrupted by evil spirits that are probably residing within this hotel. Mm-hmm. And he's slowly just losing it because he can't understand what's going on, and you can see that in the prose. But in a 2.5 hour long movie, or however long the movie is...
It's about 2.5 hours.
Great. But, like, in there, you have to cut all that 300 pages worth of character arc down to 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm. And you're just, No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it does show that slow decay and everything, but what I was just going to say was, you know, where in the book, he's a good man that is corrupted. In the film, he's more obviously an abusive, distant father, husband, who... The if you believe that the hotel is actually haunted, you know, he uses this stuff basically as an excuse to go ham. Mm-hmm. Right, like it was all inside him from the beginning.
Right, exactly.
Which is just a different take on it. So.
It is, and I feel like, but I think that's one of those things that, like, transphobic or not, she is. I respect J.K. Rowling so much for her approach to the Harry Potter adaptations because she was like, you know what? They're movies. And
things are going to have to be cut.
Yeah, and she's like, and there are certain things that are non-negotiables. Like, for example, when she showed up to, like, the 6th book, like, table reading, there was a line, apparently, where, like, you know the part in the movie where Dumbledore goes to pick up Harry to take him back to Hogwarts?
Yeah.
Because Dumbledore's, like, interrupting a date.
Oh, no,
apparently, in the original script, Dumbledore's like, I remember a girl with raven hair, and like he's describing this girl he was apparently in love with, and J.K. Rowling's reading this line as Dumbledore's reading it, and she writes on her script, Steve, Dumbledore's gay, and like shoots it up the table, and he picks it up and he looks at her and goes, oh, like it's just one of those moments where it was like, oh, like that's a character thing that
you could just really tell that the person did not read the book in that moment.
Like, so you just like cut out a line and it doesn't change or shift. You know what I mean? That's different than like, let's say Harry loses at the end. Like that's or you know what I mean? Like it's a difference between like treating the books as if they're like sacred ground that you can't stomp on, whereas you know that forces the people making the adaptation into an uncomfortable situation. Like, they have to have room to figure out how to piece this thing together and say what it is they're trying to say.
They have to be able to take that 300 pages and cram it into 2.5 hours.
But also, I think especially these days, like, directors get a bad rap for not being Stanley Kubrick, which is to say, for not having a perspective. So that if I go and I watch a Stanley Kubrick film, I'm going to know it's a Stanley Kubrick film because there are certain things that he's doing, that he's saying, and The Shining as he was reading it fit into that Stanley Kubrick film Psychosis in a completely different way than it fit into the Stephen King is writing a book Psychosis. Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting about King's adaptations, to veer back towards the.
We're gonna veer back towards the subject.
Is that as successful as that film is? It's clear he learned his whatever he needed to learn, because then you get down to Shawshank Redemption, which is, I mean, oh my god.
No, that and The Shining are the two best.
Yes.
My goal in life is to visit that actual prison.
Really?
Do you want to do a ghost hunt or something?
Yeah, that's in Mansfield. That's in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
That's the Ohio State Reformatory. That's an actual physical place.
They didn't shoot that thing in Ohio because it's too pretty, and we all know. Sorry for y'all who live or have family or folks in Ohio. I got people I love in Ohio too. That is not a pretty state. Next.
No, they filmed it there. They filmed it at the prison.
Really? Yeah. They do have
that prison exists. Like, if you look at pictures of that
at the prison?
Yeah.
Wow.
They have a good library system too. Let's not do that.
Okay. All right. That's. I mean,
it's probably one of the better recognized in the country.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And they're a swing state.
Well, they have to have something, I guess.
I say we go to war with Ohio. I'm just
no, we already did that. We can't do that again.
We need to take back Toledo.
No, listen, they can have Toledo. The last time we had a war, Wisconsin lost and we got the Upper Peninsula.
I mean, we got the better thing, I'd say.
So, okay. What is your favorite thing about reading a Stephen King anything?
Oh, favorite thing about it, not favorite book, favorite thing?
Just favorite thing about reading him, as a writer.
Is that the adrenaline, the suspense?
That's a general question. I'm just starting with
suspense and adrenaline that I get from reading it, because I'm like, okay, I need to put this down because there's a lot happening, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, I don't. I need to keep going, and there's a lot that comes from basically his horror stuff, and just in general is just very precise enough that I'm sitting there just going, I like this. This is a formula that I can get behind, because I can see the suspense happening and my brain is going 5 different directions because I don't know where he's going, but I have some bets on what's going to happen next.
Sure. Yeah.
I've always liked he's always been a strong, we talk about horror writer, but he's always been a very strong fantasy writer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, The Dark Tower, again, referencing The Dark Tower, because it's probably my favorite work of his to date. Yeah. And it's not just one, it's all of them.
Yeah.
Because, by the time I got done, I was like, wow. But, even there's Arthurian legend is told through the Dark Tower books.
Yeah.
Literally, the Roland Deschain, the gunslinger, he is descended from King Arthur. And they talk about it in the book. So but even in those horror novels, there's a fantasy element, the world building, the story, the lore behind usually the protagonist or the villain, whatever. Antagonist, not protagonist, but there's usually some deeper. It's not just some random.
Right.
Even the killers typically are influenced by some otherworldly supernatural thing, which in and of itself, in the King verse, has a deeper history to that.
Yeah. As we were talking earlier in the workroom, I pointed out to you that I feel like he is the last of his kind in terms of writers, particularly in the United States. I don't think we're ever going to get another writer like Stephen King, because he is a part of a generation that grew up reading pulp magazines. And he's frequently, throughout his whole career, he's always said, that he loved the pulp magazines growing up as a kid, which is it was very characteristic of people Heinlein and all these the people who are known for science fiction and fantasy, the big names of his generation, who would be the same age as him or what have you. They also grew up reading the pulps and were influenced by him, but he never saw the partitions that they saw. He never looked at literature as a thing where, well, this story is a science fiction story, or this one's a fantasy, or this one's a western, or this one's a horror. He never did that. He was like, oh, it just feels like that one story that one time that I read, or it feels like a group of stories that I read in Weird Tales one time, or he's just subconsciously pulling from the stuff that made him want to write, and he's never stopped. And he has a really, he reads that way too, because he was a reviewer for the Entertainment Weekly for I think a decade or more. And he was doing it as Harry Potter was coming out, and one of the things he frequently talked about in the pages of the Entertainment Weekly and in other places, he always said that he felt that Harry Potter like humbled him as a writer, because he was like, yeah, I'm Stephen King. Like, he was like a beast. He was like, yes, New York Times bestselling author, Stephen King, yes, awesome. And then he picks up this children's book about a boy wizard and was like, oh, she's better than me. Like, he was just like, he's like, I mean, she uses way too many adverbs, but dang, she's better than me. And like, he just like, the whole time, you know, and he would say at every review for each new book, he'd be like, yeah, you know, we'll see if she can finish the series as well as she started it out, but each one keeps getting better, but we'll see. And then book 7 came out, and like at the very tail end, he's like, girl still has a problem with those adverbs, but God, she's good. Like, it was so, like, and I think part of that comes from the fact that he just reads so widely. Like, he will read and review a highbrow literary fiction novel, and then he'll read a Harry Potter novel, and then he'll read a horror book. Like, he doesn't.
And then he's got Rick Riordan, there you go.
Yeah, like, he doesn't see genre. Like, he just, you know,
And that kind of goes into what I was going to say, that, like, my favorite part of reading Stephen King is the voice. And I think part of that is the way that he just absorbs pop culture, high and low, and he just rattles off, like, you know, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you're reading, you're talking to some random guy from Maine, you know, telling you the story, like, no, I just think he, especially in like horror or genre fiction, whatever you want to say, he has a very particular, singular voice that you know you're reading one of his books. Like it can't be mistaken for anybody else.
And that's hard.
Then the scope of his novels.
There's this great. Everyone should go look this up. It's on YouTube. It's him and George R.R. Martin. I think so. Stephen King was doing his Mr. Mercedes trilogy at the time, and I think it was the third one was coming out, and then I think Dance of Dragons had come out. So, like, you know, they're on tour together, because who else are you going to send on tour with the guy who just put out Dance of Dragons? I mean, you know, and they're on stage together, and they start talking, they're chattering, and Stephen King goes, "All right, George, listen, your books are too damn big." Like,
who was he to be talking about this?
Right. That's what I was like, are you serious? And he's like, no, seriously, bro. Like, I was like, not even going to read your books in preparation for this. But my wife is very clever. She has this monster book sitting on her nightstand, and she's reading like 10 pages at a time, because that's how she reads. And like, I'm not touching this thing. I know this is coming up. And then what happens? I get sick randomly in Florida. So I'm laying there on antibiotics, can't sleep, can't do anything else. Those big books are staring at me on my wife's nightstand. So, you know, I pick up the first one and I'm like, these aren't going to be that great. This guy's too popular for this to be that great. Right? Stephen King, of all people.
You literally said this about J.K. Rowling.
Right, and so he just flips open and he's like, I couldn't put them down, George. I could not put them down. You're too good. How do you do it? It was the greatest. And like then George R.R. Martin, like, because he's so glib, he turns to the audience and he goes, "Huh? Stephen King's one of my fans." Like, it was like the best moment. It was really cool just to watch. And it I think the thing that's great about those two in particular is that, like, George R.R. Martin always feels like he's a little boy reading pulp magazines from New Jersey, and Stephen King always feels like he's the little boy reading, you know, pulp magazines from Maine. So there's that, like, thing of, like, these two people
who both read pulp magazines.
Yeah, and they could never have. They may never have ever been what they are now, but they just can't stop. Like, they're so obsessive about this thing that they do, and people just happen to really want more and more and more, you know, of their work. So, you know, I don't know.
It wasn't sent to you, bro.
I find I was checking the time. I don't know. It's a fun video. You should all watch it. It's cool.
No, I love his interviews. He's just a natural storyteller. Like every anecdote is entertaining.
It is.
And he's funny.
He's hilarious. Yeah, he's so funny.
They even make. I think it was a Family Guy episode where they made fun of him.
Yeah, they did. They did like 3 books of his, right? They did Misery.
Well, no, there wasn't. Like, it was like this weird little. I can't remember the full context of the episode, but I can remember him going up as like his publisher, and so Stephen, this is a book about a toaster that comes to life and starts marauding around the small town killing everyone.
Oh, I was about to say, you can say you're
And he
talking about
says-
Brace's little toaster.
And then he's like, yep. Steven, you're not even trying anymore, are you? Steven doesn't say anything. Just pulls out like a big wad of money and says, just take it. And because there have been times growing up over the years, I'm like, he's so like annoyingly creative and inventive. Like just like, I mean, the scope of his works. I mean, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian. Now, like legit, like this fairy tales book that everyone's talking about, and their excitement is like, if this is my Starless Sea, I'm done. But
but no, I really do think
like,
it comes from that. It's a kind of reading that creatives don't do anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because it's harder to do that than it used to, like than when he was growing up. But people find their niche or their favorite thing or their little genre or whatever. They find a little corner, and they read in that corner, and they love that corner, and it's their polishing. It's their
and then they become the little gremlin that just sits in the corner, and you walk in the room,
like
and they go,
their...
"Oh yeah, don't go in that corner. That's where this person lives." And then you're just like, "Well, what do you mean?" And you walk over there, and they just start like snarling at you because that's their corner.
Yeah.
And how dare you like try to grab them out of it?
And I suppose I'll have to amend my statement because I always forget how much Neil Gaiman has done. I mean,
We stand Neil Gaiman.
I think Neil Gaiman is the other person that's
Yeah.
just like, he reads literally you hand him a book, and by the time you walk out of the room, he's read it and has opinions, and you're just like, what? And like smart opinions, like not just like, oh, it was good, it was bad. No, like, the structure of this book reminds me of the time I first read R.A. Lafferty. Now, R.A. Lafferty was really fun because when I met him in an elevator, and you're like, really, Neil? Like, what? Like, it's...
His Tumblr is hilarious, too.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
But, like, it's that,
Twitter,
it's that same...
Instagram. Yeah.
They're creative minds already, but they don't take for granted the fact that they could... Like, I think they're terrified that they won't be able to create anymore, so they're constantly feeding the machine.
Yeah.
And so their output is as creative as it is because what they're putting into themselves is not limited by, well, I don't read that because I write fantasy, so I can't read.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I can't read the Amish Mennonite fiction because I write fantasy, and then you're like,
Yeah,
well, what if they wore Amish clothing in your fantasy fiction? I don't know.
I don't get that mindset at all. Like,
It's
so much you could learn from other stuff.
It's true, and as creatives, it's strange for creatives to do it, but I find it so interesting. One of the things about working in libraries that I've always found interesting is the way that readers read, because that's how casual, everyday readers, that's how they read.
Yeah.
Like, if you tell them, like, if you say to a reader, oh my gosh, I read this really cool book that I think you might like, and you pitch it to them that way, and you tell them what it's about, they're way more likely to read it than if you say, oh my gosh, so I read this fantasy book, and if you're talking to someone who's a mystery reader, like, like, they'll stop you. They're like, no, I don't read that. And you're just like...
But that's where you have to start with, so I read this book the other day, and it was about this, and it was really cool. I think you should just read it. Don't tell them that there's orcs and dragons in it. Just, like, hand it to them, and they'll read it, and then they'll come back, and they'll be like, well, I didn't expect to read that, but there you go.
Photoshop a cover if you have to.
Yeah, right.
Fake cover.
That's a lot of work. We'll do anything to get a book in your hands.
This is why we blind date with a book.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's just one of those, it's rare, way rare now for creators to, like, actually, take in everything, which is probably why creativity is really stale right now. Don't get me started.
Just for the
That'll be
level of
another
creativity
episode.
and his range, one of my favorite, I have to reference the movie because it's a movie he also likes, Shawshank Redemption. And if you've read the story, it's such a beautiful story, which kind of messes with me a little bit because it's in that little collection of books. And, like, all the other stories in that book were like horrific and terrible. They're not like bad, but just like,
You want to take a shower afterwards.
yeah, It's
How do you
like,
know you're in a Stephen King story?
Like, and I know it was a moment of like desperation, but like ultimately it was a story about hope, but like how beautiful it was and how unlike, I mean, at the time of reading it, how unlike it was like anything else of his that I'd read. So it's like his range is just...
It is incredible. Oh my gosh. Speaking of adaptations, does anyone remember when The Green Mile came out?
96?
Oh my gosh.
I was barely conscious, but...
that movie
I
was
was one.
so
It's an amazing movie.
It was. I've never seen it, partially because the furor around that movie, like good furor, but like people were so about the Green Mile. And then
99.
there was a whole group of like people, like my mom,
Is that when the movie came out?
Yeah.
saw the Green Mile, and then you tell them,
four.
they get to the end and they see the credits, and it's like based on a novel by Stephen King, and my mom was like, "That's a Stephen King movie? No way!" And I'm like, "Shawshank is a Stephen King movie," and she goes, "Oh yeah, I always forget that's you know, like
Yeah.
it's like."
Yeah, he was telling an anecdote once where there was like an old lady he was in line with somewhere, maybe in a bookstore, and they were getting into a conversation, and she got into like how she didn't like Stephen King books. He's like, "Oh," or something like that. I forget exactly. But anyways, and then basically he said, "You know," and she said, "Oh, but I love that Shawshank Redemption," and he's like, "You know, I wrote the Shawshank Redemption," and she didn't believe him. So,
Of course, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would you? That's hilarious.
Even thinking about the like a weird little translation from movie to book, like The Hearts at Atlantis is a really kind of sweet book. There's a tiny little element of magic in it,
Sure.
more mind reading, kind of.
Oh well, you know,
it's almost impossible to escape some like paranormal with Stephen King,
Yeah,
even,
he
even
loves-
if it is, which
yeah.
is it's an interesting part of his.
Yeah, it is a nice little like. Yeah, I feel like there's something in him that he's trying to figure out about the mind. Like he recognizes the power of his own mind because he accesses his imagination so much, and part of me thinks he may fear it. Like and so he's writing from a place of like, how do I understand this thing that I don't understand? Like I don't know why I'm the person who does this so much. I just do it. But I think so many of his characters and stories having that like mental psychosis as
Right.
part of,
And
you know.
someone with a deeper knowledge of Stephen King, wasn't he famously rejected repeatedly by publisher after publisher after publisher? And his initial forays into his...
Yeah, Carrie. Well, no, he was published. Before Carrie, he was rejected a lot, and you know, many writers are. And then as he started Carrie, he thought it was no good. He threw it out.
Carrie was rejected 30 times.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
30
I mean,
publishers.
it's not surprising. I just didn't realize the number was that high. But so he threw Carrie out. His wife had developed a habit at this point of going through his trash can before emptying it, because she frequently would find like manuscript pieces in there. But most of the time she would just throw them out. Like she'd be like, "Oh yeah, that was pretty bad," and throw them out. Carrie was the first one where she read all of it that he had written so far, and came to him, and he was like, I was at a point of desperation. I was losing my mind, and I think she knew that, and she approached me at the right time. And she goes, "Hun, I think this one is one you should keep going, because it's pretty good." And he's like, "But it's about a teenage girl. I don't know anything about teenage girls." And she goes, "You married someone who used to be one. Maybe ask me about it." And he was like, oh, and so that's why Carrie even happened. So, you know.
Also, really quick, I was thinking about something I needed to tell you. Did you know that Stephen King has a son named Joe?
Yes.
I'm not joking, but he is.
King!
Oh my god.
Speaking of shenanigans,
I should read his son, actually.
I think Annie needs to throw out the
I've
smack
read
that
some
they
of his-
created.
Oh yeah, Lock and Key, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And Robert Rodriguez was the co-written by Joe Hill and Robert
Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez. I'd have to double check.
Robert.
I forget Robert.
No, I think
Rodriguez.
it's Gabriel Rodriguez.
I have to look it up. But
Okay,
anyways,
so
smack. We have an uncomfortable one.
An uncomfortable one.
Pennywise, Bozo, and Ronald McDonald.
Oh, I see. I don't know anything about
Yeah, who is
Pennywise,
Bozo?
but Bozo from The Simpsons.
Oh, well, I thought his name
He
was.
had that TV show, like the
Krusty.
little children's show they go
Oh,
on.
you're
there.
right. No, it is Krusty. I always confuse Krusty with Bozo.
Like Bozo from the old black and white children's
Yeah.
TV show.
Well, there was even a color one in the late 80s or early
Okay,
90s.
well, they all kind of creep me out to varying
See,
degrees.
I'm just gonna marry
Ew.
Pennywise because it's Bill Skarsgård, and that's all I need to know.
What about Tim Curry?
okay.
I would rather marry the Tim Curry one because he'd be more fun, I think. For me, anyway.
Okay, so I just feel like.
Does this mean we're getting rid of Ronald?
I think we're gonna kill.
Can I just go? Can I just go to prison for being the clown killer?
Okay,
Like, just kill all of them.
that's well, you know.
The world's first serial killer of clowns.
I mean, it'd be
I'm
a
gonna-
complete juxtaposition from like 2016.
You're right, exactly. What did anyone else find that weird? The whole clowns killing people thing in 2016.
This is
They
like the
didn't
weirdest
actually kill
ending we've
people,
ever
did
had
they?
ever.
No, maybe they were just showing
Does this
up.
mean I have to
Yeah,
end
they were
the
kinda-
joke again?
So they didn't actually kill people?
I don't think so.
Yes,
Oh,
I think Erin needs
In fact,
to tell
I
her
would-
joke again.
Okay.
Because they have to get, the listeners have to guess what they're from. So a clown, a psychopath, and a prom queen all walk into a bar and they ask the bartender, "Excuse me, I'm lost. Can you direct me to the cemetery? I need to bury my cat."
I thought they needed to resurrect their cat.
That too.
Sorry.
No, so they bury the cat, and instead of the cat coming back, it's actually a dog. Woof.
Oh. Oh. So wait, you had a clown thing. You were doing a clown thing.
What?
With the smack?
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to the desk. I'll see.
I'll
you.
be up in a minute.
I'm gonna kill Pennywise
Okay.
just because he's a murderous,
no.
evil clown.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill Bozo because he's slightly creepier.
Did you just say you're gonna kill both
I'm gonna-
clowns? You
I-
can only pick one.
No, I'm gonna kill Bozo.
Okay.
I'm gonna kill Bozo because he creeps me out slightly more than Ronald McDonald, even though there's a certain malevolence to Ronald McDonald. That's
Yeah.
agree.
He's really the bigger killer of
Yeah,
all the
I was
three.
gonna say he has the biggest head count.
my
That's true. He
For
would.
death
Yeah. That's true. He would.
Pennywise is like, "What kind of clown are you?" And Ronald comes out of, "What? You an amateur? I've killed millions of children." And
I just want to know why the Joker wasn't included in this.
because I wanted to go a little bit more uncomfortably clown costume.
Oh,
He has a bod-
costume-wise. I'm like,
He has a very vaudevillian theatrical look.
That's true. I was gonna say you can't get more